Hello friends of Oak Hills, this is Pastor Dale coming to you for our weekly video Touchpoint. Today is Thursday, November 17th, 2022. For our Points to Ponder article, we're returning to our series on the big story of the Bible. We're almost done with it. This is chapter 11, titled Expansion. Chapter 10, Application, and chapter 11, Expansion, of the big story of the Bible go hand in hand. Application focused on the theological work of the Holy Spirit applying the redemption accomplished by Christ. Expansion focuses on the historical outworking of that application in the church age. The full fruit of God's covenant of redemption expands farther and farther to every corner of the earth. Jesus' final words before his ascension in Acts 1:8 give an outline not only for the book of Acts, but also for this chapter of the big story. Jesus said, "You will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the end of the earth." The witness of Christ's redemption expanded outward like ripples from Jerusalem. In Acts chapters 1 through 7, the attention is primarily on the Jerusalem church. The persecution that arose after the martyrdom of Stephen pushed the church to expand out to Judea and Samaria. We see this expansion in Acts chapters 8 through 12. And then the Holy Spirit led the church at Antioch to set apart Paul and Barnabas to carry the gospel to the Gentiles outside of that Palestine region. In each of his 3 missionary journeys, Paul travels farther and farther from Judea in Acts chapters 13 through 20. The book of Acts concludes recounting the story of Paul's trials and travels to Rome in Acts 21 through 28. This was God's design from the beginning. He told Abram, all the way back in Genesis 12, verse 3, "In you, all the families of the earth shall be blessed." The expansion of the church through the preaching of the gospel and the power of the Holy Spirit is the fulfillment of Genesis 12:3. Jesus also said, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." That's in Matthew 24, verse 14. Jesus says that the end, namely his second coming, will not occur until the gospel has been preached through the whole world. It is not only the proclamation of the gospel that is predicted, though. In John's vision of the throne room of heaven, he hears the angelic host praising the Lamb, saying, "By your blood you ransomed people for God from every tribe and language and people and nation," in Revelation 5:9. Jesus has effectively purchased a people for God. This specific group of people will hear the gospel and respond in faith. Jesus didn't shed his blood just to give people the possibility of being saved. He shed his blood to effectively save them. And this group of people is from every tribe and language and people and nation. The work of redemption accomplished by Jesus and applied by the Spirit must expand to every tribe and language and people and nation. We presently live in this chapter of the big story of the Bible. Our mission is to be a part of the expansion of the church through the preaching of the gospel. We hear this in Jesus' own words, famously called the Great Commission. "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you." Christians throughout the history of the church have been inspired by these scriptural promises and mandates to leave goods and kindred behind in order to bring the gospel to another tribe or language or people or nation. William Carey was one such Christian who went and inspired many others to follow in his footsteps. In fact, Carey is called the father of modern missions because he sparked a new movement of missions in the last 200 years. In 1792, he wrote a little booklet titled An Inquiry into the Obligations of Christians to Use Means for the conversion of the heathens. Carey was confronting the unbiblical idea within the church at that time that God did not need the church to mobilize to bring the gospel to every tribe and language and people and nation. Since Carey wrote that booklet and traveled to India himself to preach the gospel, thousands of Christians have traveled to every inhabited continent to bring the gospel to people who have never heard the name Jesus. There still are tribes and languages that do not have the truth of the gospel. The question this chapter presents us is, in what way am I participating in the expansion of the gospel throughout the world? We have the privilege of supporting those who do go across the globe to share the gospel. We have opportunities to share the gospel with our neighbors right here in our own community. We also ought to be praying diligently for laborers for the harvest. And God even calls some of us to go. What is your role in this great expansion? To touch on a few highlights before we wrap up today, as a reminder, here in the month of November, we've been asking you to be praying for our missionaries of the month, Evan and Holly Shaw. They serve with Sacred Road Ministry in the Pacific Northwest, specifically aiming to minister on the Warm Springs Reservation. So continue to pray for them and their ministry and their outreach. And part of that is their Christmas outreaches, which, as a reminder, this is our second note to touch on. This Sunday is the deadline to bring in your shoebox gifts that we will ship out to the Pacific Northwest, to Sacred Road. And Evan and Holly and others like Chris and Mary Granberry and Total Emo, others on the staff will take these two kids on the reservations and share the hope of the Christmas story with these kids. And so our gifts that we provide in those shoebox gifts are important and valuable bridge building efforts to minister to kids on the Native American reservation. So please, while you're praying for Evan and Holly, also fill those shoe boxes, bring them back to the church by this Sunday, November 20th, and we will get those shipped out in time for their Christmas celebrations. This Sunday evening at 6 p.m., we're having a special Thanksgiving service for our church family. This will be a hymn sing and a public opportunity for public testimony to give thanks to God for his goodness and the things he's provided for in your life. So please plan to join us Sunday evening at 6 p.m. We'd love to have the whole church family together. We'll have a dessert fellowship following. And then the other detail coming up here is it's Advent season starting the following Sunday, November 27th. So you have Thanksgiving next week, and then Advent begins. And we love Advent at Oak Hills. It's a rich time to not only look back at the birth of Christ and the gift that God has given us, but also anticipate, looking forward to the second coming of Christ and the work that he will complete when he returns. So we're excited for Christmas. Watch for details of special services, special Christmas reception, and the gatherings that we have over this next month. So plan to be a part of that. With that, we are starting a new sermon series this Sunday that will carry us through the whole Christmas season. And this series is titled Christmas Through the Eyes of Micah. I'm not talking about my own son, Micah. I'm talking about the prophet Micah in the Old Testament. 700 years before Jesus was born, Micah was talking about Jesus and calling the people of God to faithfulness and hope in the good promises of God's covenant blessings on his people. And so it's going to be a rich experience over the next 6 weeks. We're going to be looking at this short little prophet in the Old Testament and consider Christmas through the eyes of Micah. So I'd encourage you, if you take time to prepare for Sunday morning, to read through Micah chapter 1 and 2, or even read through the whole book in preparation for Sunday, just to begin to hear his words and be prepared for our new series. Well, thanks for joining me this week for our weekly Touchpoint. I look forward to seeing you soon. God bless.